So we're going to go ahead and get started. There's still plenty of people joining. Thank you all for being here today for our webinar on the Texas Education Freedom Accounts, what early childhood education providers need to know. We are thrilled to share more about this opportunity for your pre-K eligible families and your program. And we're joined here by some of the best in the game, some experts who are helping prop this new program up across the state. So I'm joined here today by Daniel Warner from Odyssey, Morgan Camu from outschool.org, and Dorice Ramsey from the Child Care Business Hub at Child Care Associates. My name is Catherine Davis. I'm the Director of Policy at Child Care Associates. I'll be driving the slides today, and I'm also joined here by my colleague, Jordan Brown, who's also on our policy team at CCA. She'll be managing the Q&A. If you do have questions, we will have 2 times throughout this webinar for Q&A. We ask that you drop any questions specifically in the Q&A feature up at the top, not the chat. It's actually different. So drop those questions in, and Jordan will filter through questions for Daniel, Morgan, and Dorice during our Q&A portions of the day. Here is just a quick agenda of our time together. So we'll do a quick overview of the TEFA program. Daniel will share a little bit more about what providers need to know, the work that Odyssey is doing, how you can apply for the program, and some of the ins and outs related to implementation.
Dorice from Child Care Associates will help talk through business best practices to help recommend some tips and strategies for providers who are interested in TEFA and what you might need to know to prepare to receive this funding. We'll stop for a Q&A briefly to talk about provider supports, and then we'll jump into family supports for families who are interested in applying. So Odyssey will start us off there and talk about the application process, and then Outschool will talk about how they'll be preparing supports for families as well. Oh, we totally lost our slides. Okay, let me share mine. Okay, so the Education Savings Account program, this a quick overview of what the Texas Education Freedom Accounts are. So colloquially, they've been called school vouchers. They've also been called education savings accounts. We have the official name, Texas Education Freedom Accounts, or TEFA. So these funds can be used to pay for private school tuition, including pre-K at an eligible child care program. So that's a big one. And kindergarten is included for eligible child care programs as well. Students can also pay for these for homeschool expenses, for tutoring, and other private education-related costs. So applications are opening in February, and funds will be awarded to families for use in the 26-27 school year. Let me know when you're back up. Okay. So we have a rulemaking update. If you weren't aware already, there was some disparities between how much funding private preschool children were going to receive for TEFA. Originally, the comptroller limited that number to $2,000 per year. And thanks to the advocacy of childcare programs across the state, those students are now going to receive the full $10,400. So that's an amazing achievement. We provided a lot of letters. Childcare programs really made their voices heard, so much that we had multiple news outlets report on it because of how the volume of letters that were sent. So we wanted to let you know, in case you hadn't heard, preschool children in childcare programs will receive the full amount. So here's a quick overview of the TEFA administration structure. So if you didn't already know, this program lives at the Texas Comptroller of Public Accounts. So it's not at TEA, which oversees a lot of education, or all the public education. This is actually housed at the comptroller, but then Odyssey is the one who is providing a lot of the structure, overseeing the administration, including the applications, providing the financial structure, all within their web portal. And Daniel will talk a little bit more about that later. And then Outschool is a subcontractor to Odyssey, who is providing that family engagement and application support piece. And Morgan will give us a little bit more detail about that later. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Daniel to talk about the provider application.
Awesome. Thank you, Jordan. So Daniel Warner, I'm Texas State Director for Odyssey. And so yeah, we'll get started. So if we could flip to the next couple slides, this should give you a little background on probably who Odyssey is. So we administer school choice programs amongst kind of micro grant and other things across the country, and just a few of the states that we already work in. And so we also do soup to nuts 7 days a week. In-house customer support. So if you ever call with a provider issue or a family needs to call, telling where's my application, something like that, we are happy to help. And so another thing that's important is that about 86% of our families apply on their phone. So you could do these things at your school. You could do them wherever. You could have little fairs with drop off. Please apply. So yeah, I'll get into the details of that a little bit later. And again, so this number, and I think Jordan kind of nailed it home, that increased amount for pre-K3, pre-K4, and then kinder, the private school students will receive $10,474 a year, and that does not include children that might be diagnosed with an IEP or with a special need that includes an IEP. And if you have an IEP in that second bucket right there, you can get up to $30,000. Everyone else, if you're not enrolled in a certified provider under the Texas Education Code 29171 or an accredited school through the agency recognized by the Texas Private School Accreditation Commission, you are receiving $2,000. And so this is kind of things what it can be used for. So you have tuition and fees, uniforms, textbooks, private tutor or teaching services, therapies, transportation, which I will say must be fee for service. So and so all of these things that are billed outside, including tuition and technology, but hopefully our youngest ones aren't on the screen all the time. But and so basically technology is capped at 10% of that annual allocation every year. And all of these things can be purchased on an internal closed marketplace that we will also provide once families are enrolled in the program. And so December 9th, the initial wave of application or links went out to eligible providers. And I know a lot of providers have been inbound with us with, saying I'm TRS 3 or 4 or I'm NIAC certified or have a partnership already in place. We've been triaging those, and as long as you populate an HHSC system or TWC or kind of some kind of certification to us, we've been pretty quick to onboard those. And if you have any issues, we can discuss that at the end, kind of where to reach out to. And I will keep in mind that for any kind of provider, the application window never closes. So if you think you're getting a 3 or 4 in the spring or 3 or 4 over the summer, or you're going to have another accreditation, things like that, we will continuously update this, and it's a pretty seamless application. And so these are just the pre-K approved providers, as I mentioned. These are the kind of what the outline of the chapter of the Education Code 29171 lays out. So that first one is accredited and research-based, nationally accredited by the Commissioner of Education. So think, the NIAC and things like that, Montessori, whatever might be in that. The Workforce Commission, TRS provider 3 or 4. A Texas School Ready participant, which that overlaps a lot with 3 or 4s. A lot of these kind of overlap with each other. Has an existing partnership with the school district to provide a pre-K program. So sometimes we see, which we've done in the seeing it come in, a school might be a 1 or 2 star, but they have that documentation and a legal document to prove that they have a pre-K partnership, and we will take that. So don't feel that just because you're not a 3 or 4 right now. 3 or 4 is the easiest method by us because we can just look that up. But if you have that, it's one more step just to prove to us, and then you're good to go. And then the last one is accredited by organization recognized by the Texas Private School Accreditation Commission. And I will pause there quick. I know some providers are also Cognia accredited. I know that's a pretty important one. At this time, the Comptroller of Public Accounts has directed Odyssey not to send those Cognia accredited schools yet. They're checking some legal issues on their end, but as soon as that happens, we will open the floodgates and everyone will get their invitation to apply. And so this is kind of once you register your account, this is kind of just a quick step-by-step how to set up your Stripe account. So we use Stripe. So a parent basically, once they are awarded an amount and that private and that pre-K provider or school sets that tuition and fees, this is how we pay you. And so if you set it, on a monthly basis, a yearly basis, things like that, and it's pretty easy. You could decide to get paid monthly. You could decide to get paid weekly. You could pull it out whenever you want. So this is how we do it. And so there's a whole FAQ that will drop in afterward, just kind of how to set that up, if that's helpful. And this is the all things TEFA related website. And so if you go to educationfreedom.texas.gov, which will also be the site that we want to drive all of our parents to apply. There'll be a nice big red apply here button on February 4th. And that's how you stay up to date with all those kind of great information that we'll be providing. And I'll give it over to Dorice.
All right. Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate it. And hello, everyone. Dorice Ramsey. I'm with Child Care Associates. And what I'm going to be talking about is just best business practices for child care operations. If you want to advance, please. And the first thing that we would say is read the TEFA guidelines, eligibility, and allowable uses. The QR code that was just shared is really a valuable tool for your research. So if you didn't have the opportunity, you didn't have your phone out to scan that code, we will share it again, or you can go directly to the website, which is going to be educationfreedom.texas.gov. But again, we'll put that QR code up again. Now, funds may be used only for the pre-K portion of the day, aligned with Texas required pre-K hours. Anything beyond that must be charged separately. Reminder that the funds are for pre-K only, so not for your infant toddler kiddos. Schools may not set different rates for children based upon participation in TEFA. And for the comptroller, it is your responsibility that if you no longer meet the requirements of the program, that you are responsible as the business operations to let the comptroller know that you are no longer qualified. And for marketing your program to get this information out to the parents, Daniel and Morgan are going to share additional information a little bit later in the program, but you want to make sure that it's very clear on how this program is available to families that are in your program. Now, everything that I'm going to say, I just want to remind people we're going into a TWC program that is new, and therefore things will evolve. It is your responsibility, I will say it again, to make sure that you stay up to date on the changes. What I am sharing is just general best practice information for child care operations. So I know that there are going to be varying levels of business acumen on this call. For some of what I'm sharing, you guys are going to be like, okay, I do that. Yeah, that's great. Give yourself a pat on the back. But in doing business coaching of child care centers, I do know that there are centers that are out there that do not have some of the items that I'm going to talk about. You do not have those in place. So this is an opportunity for you to consider those. And also, we will also put a link in the chat a little bit later on where you can find some of those resources. Next slide. Okay, so recording and tracking payments. Have a designated business bank account. That's number one. These funds should not go into your personal account. So you want to make sure that you have a business bank account to connect to your Stripe account. After verification, you can set up a schedule to automatically receive payments, or you can manually go in and draw down payments when available. Remember, automation is your friend. So if you're a little bit leery of that, start to get comfortable with automation and how that can really help you. TEFA funds, and we will repeat this again many times, may only be used for the pre-K portion of the day. If you are still using paper and pencil for your budgets and record keeping, consider moving to a detailed spreadsheet. If you are using a spreadsheet right now, consider moving to a software program that tracks your tuition and related breakdowns. Now, we have no recommendations on child care management software. There are many that are out there, so what we would suggest is go ahead, just do your research and see what fits best for your business operations as far as the size that you are and the cost. Ultimately, what you do is really what feels comfortable to you as that business owner, but the more you automate, the less chance you have of making human entry errors. Make sure that you are tracking services that are not part of the standard preschool tuition rate. So things like the before and after parent pay part. If you're charging extra fees for anything, if you're using a spreadsheet, you want to make sure that your spreadsheet has columns for all of those things that you can track. If you are using a child care management system, guess what? That's already set up on the platform. It's already in the system. So there it's just plugging in those relevant numbers. Next slide, please. So again, using dedicated software or a detailed spreadsheet to itemize services, you want to make sure that you're doing this. Capturing this information is really going to give you that full revenue picture of your business. It's very easy as we get busy in our day-to-day things that we forget or we don't track or we don't come back and reconcile, all those things that we do as a business owner or as a child care director. So again, making sure that you have a system that works for you and that you are following that system. We would say create dedicated files, digital folders where you scan photos, and you want to do it for redundancy. So if you keep digital files, you may want to keep a hard copy too, because guess what? Technology happens and things happen. So it's always good to just be redundant to make sure that you have an electronic file and a paper file as well. Do you have written tuition policies to include payment and billing? Make sure that they are clearly defined. Set a schedule to monitor and reconcile regularly. Automate, again, where possible, using a child care management system. But if you are manually entering data, make sure that you are checking for those data entry errors. Do you have a record retentions policy? Again, all these things when we talk about how to run your operation effectively, you want to make sure that you have a record retention schedule. If you are receiving funds through CACFP or any federal program, you probably do. If you're a smaller business, you may not have considered that. So make sure that if you do not have one, to go ahead and develop one. I am going to, in the chat, put a link. Let me do that now. And the resources that are here are, if you were familiar with the Texas Business Coaching Program, they have a lot of good resources that are still on the website. How to best set up these policies, what are best practices, how to let automation be your friend, things like that. So the link is in the chat if you want to take a look at that, and that way you can find additional resources for yourself. Next slide, please. All right, so last, be audit ready. This does not mean that you are going to be audited, but if you are, you must cooperate. Auditors will not reach out to child care providers directly. Again, let me repeat, this is a new program, and I just remember when the Child Care Relief Fund came out and the changes that the different iterations and changes. So all we're saying is start from the very beginning, having these practices in place. So if for any reason that it does come back, that you do have to provide information, that you've lessened your headache, that you are doing what you need to do from the very beginning. So now you're not trying to go back and figure it out. So again, it does not mean that you will be audited, but it does mean just to make sure that you have things in place for detailed tracking on how funds were spent and how they were used. So just in case you ever had to provide evidence in an audit, that is there for you. And with that, Jordan, we'll take any questions.
Great. Thanks, Dorice and Daniel, and apologize all for my previous technical difficulties. That's always really fun when you have 300 people on a webinar and your computer crashes. But I'm happy to be back. So we have lots of questions in the chat, Daniel and Dorice, that I will direct to you. I'm going to start with one of the more common questions I'm seeing, which I haven't received an invitation to apply. I believe that I meet the criteria. Daniel, do you want to share a little bit more about like what
Sure.
providers can
Yeah.
do?
So usually we just do an intake form on, or just email help.tx, which I will post in the chat. That's probably helpful, right? help.tx@withodyssey.com. And you can just state, 3 or 4 TRS stars. Your license number usually helps. That streamlines a whole bunch of things. And so anything like that, if you have a TRS kind of certification as well, or a NIAC or anything like that, go ahead and attach that, and that makes our process a whole bunch easier.
Awesome. We also sent out via the Early Ed Canary newsletter a link for providers. If you have not received, if you believe you're eligible and have not received a notification from Odyssey, we've created a Google form that providers can enter their information, license number, documentation of how they meet it. And we will batch send those to Odyssey as well to kind of streamline the process on both ends. Also. So another question I'm seeing is related to the pre-K hours of the day and pre-K qualifications. I'll say we have a slide coming up that shows how a child qualifies for pre-K. Most children will qualify because of their income status. They must meet the qualifications for free and reduced price lunch. There are some other qualifiers, which again we'll show on a subsequent slide. The pre-K hours of the day, Daniel, do you want to speak a little bit more to what that
I could do
what that
that.
means, what that looks
So
like?
in addition, so in addition to 29171, it also addresses also complying within the subchapter, and it's a TEA rule, but it goes on to say subchapter E1 of that code as well goes on to high quality pre-K program requirements. And so that lets out employ a qualified or certified teacher, implement a high quality curriculum, administer a program evaluation, kind of progress monitoring, provides 75,600 operational minutes for pre-K 4 and 32,400 instructional minutes for pre-K 3, according to the Student Attendance Handbook. So those are just also things that if you cannot, and part of that application process is that you attest to those things that you do, again, for the audit purposes. So if you're found to be not doing that, and we find, and the comptroller, the auditor finds that you're not doing it, you will be kicked out of the program, and there's no recourse to come back in. So I just want to be very aware that if you do accept funds and you do enroll, you are required to do these programs. Is that helpful, Catherine?
Yeah, so I think there's 2 questions in there that I'm seeing bubbling up for providers. One is regarding the hours of the day and how providers may need to charge separately. So, for example, a child enrolls in their program with a TEFA account. The provider can collect TEFA funding for the pre-K portion of the day, and then they would have to charge separately for before and after care.
That's exactly right. And so, and I'd also, say that if you want to bill for transportation, that's also allowed. So you could do that within your school portal, or you could do that within the marketplace as well. Just saying, we charge after, for pickup and drop off, and that can be billed to the parent as well. That's in addition to whatever you set for tuition.
And then Dorice, maybe you want to chime in with best practices for providers who are struggling with thinking about, well, how do I charge 2 separate tuition rates? How do I charge a parent for one portion of the day this way and a different portion of the day that way? Do you have any insights for providers on that?
What I would say is, number one, make sure that whatever your tuition policy is, it's very clear on what that looks like as you're going through this process. So as you're setting up your childcare management system or your spreadsheet or whatever you're doing, it just has to be consistent in what you're doing. So whatever that tuition is going to be, you're going to track it in that correct portal. And then the extra things that are not part of that pre-K day, that will be a separate line item, or again, in the childcare management system, you will have a place in your portal where you can add those extra fees and that you are charging to parents.
Awesome. And then the second part of the additional requirements, Daniel, I'm seeing a lot of questions asking to clarify the requirement to have a certified teacher, certified or qualified teacher, which is part of this high quality pre-K requirements. Is that a requirement of a program that is participating under these qualifications?
The answer is yes, because you would have to do that for a public pre-K partnership, and these are the exact same. These are the exact same providers that would be eligible for this.
And then I have another question here related to that, asking, TEFA is under subchapter J, not subchapter E. Why are the requirements being cited as an attestation? I'm not sure.
Because that's how the lawyers drafted the bill. And so then they refer to 29-171, and then they refer to the subchapter. And so just because the education code's a great place to put whatever you want in it. So the lawyers drafted it like that, and it's our job just to implement what they say.
Okay, another question I'm seeing is related to childcare scholarships and children who maybe are currently receiving a childcare scholarship. They then receive TEFA funding, and kind of what the implications of that are. Will the provider be notified? What happens to the funding that the family is granted? I know that's a little bit outside of Odyssey's realm, but if you can speak to that based on conversations you had potentially.
So whatever happens for that pre-K portion, that's what I would say Odyssey and the comptroller are responsible for, and anything that family received for the CCS funding, that's above and beyond that. I think that there will be some kind of true up at the end that we're still trying to figure out of like how many students did this capture, how many students are enrolled in this. So, but I don't know that I have a lot of more insight than that.
I will add that very preliminary conversations that that I have been in around this issue is I think TWC is leaning towards, although I don't know if they've made a formal decision, is leaning towards the CCS and TEFA accounts blending in a similar way of pre-K partnerships, whereas a child would receive TEFA funding for the TEFA portion, for the pre-K portion of the day, and their CCS rate would drop down to the part day rate. That is not final. That's kind of what I've been hearing in the ether, but I think we should all be looking towards TWC for further guidance on that, and we'll make sure to notify providers as we learn more information on that. Let's see. There's been a few additional questions related to setting up the Stripe account, and providers who have actually accessed have been invited to apply, but they get stuck on the Stripe account. Would they also need to reach out to that help email that you
usually
mentioned?
sometimes, the Stripe account does a whole bunch of things. One of them is like, money laundering with the FBI, kind of a connection with the IRS to make sure it is who you say they are. So they just want to establish a secure connection, but reach out to us. There's an additional FAQ on our website that you might have issues about Stripe.
Great. I'm just scrolling through a lot of these questions to make sure I'm not missing them. We will send these questions to our providers afterwards. So if I did miss your question, we'll make sure to try to get answers for you on this. There were some questions in the chat that I've tried to be responsive to regarding TRS certification. You must be TRS 3 or TRS 4. If you are entry level designation 2-star, then you are currently not eligible to participate as an approved provider in the program, and wouldn't be able to apply until you reach that at least a 3-star designation. Okay. I think we're at time for Q&A, so we're going to move forward. I will continue to come through these Q&A questions and try to make sure that we get all of them in our next Q&A portion. So I'll hand it back to Jordan.
Okay, and I will hand it over to Daniel to kick us off on our family support section.
Let's see. What do we have here? Cool. So this probably is some of the questions that have kind of come through, but let's see. So this is the qualifications for TEFA. part of the application, there's a checklist that I think that, we'll probably circulate later when you go to apply, but the child must be a U.S. citizen or nationally lawfully present in the United States, eligible to attend a Texas public school or a public school's free pre-K program. And if it's pre-K, the child must be between 3 and 5 as of September 1 of 2026. K-12 must be 5 to 25 as of September 1 of 2026. For this audience, we'll not go into why it's 25, so we'll go on. And you are not enrolled in a public school or public pre-K program at the time of participation and not graduate from high school. And so this is just kind of the pre-K qualifications, I think, and I think qualifies as free or reduced lunch, and I think the free is 130 and reduced is 185, if I'm not mistaken. And so if the child, and so when part of the application process, that families will be required to upload a 2024 or 2025 1040 IRS form, and that's how we will check that income level. But if they meet for one of the other qualifications, you might have to upload some additional documentation on the early language learner designation, child who's homeless and in foster care. I will say if you were a pre-K 4 student and you were enrolled last year in a pre-K 3 program, we'll ask if you were previous on the application if this family was previously enrolled or the child was previously enrolled in public school, because that way we can check with TEA on the back end and most of this documentation won't be necessary. So if we knew you were eligible last year in a pre-K 3 program and you're applying it for pre-K 4, that will be good to go. And see, these are just kind of the other kind of eligibility requirements for the free pre-K program. And so I don't know if we mentioned this, but Texas families will be able to access this on February 4th, 2026, and will close on March 17th, exactly 6 weeks. I would like to remind everyone that it's a 6-week open application. It is not first come, first serve. So don't feel pressured on February 4th at 9 a.m. to open it, to tell your families got to get in line. That is not the case at all. So that window closes and then the last 2-ish weeks of March, we begin to run those eligibility, make sure that, families didn't apply twice, and do all those document checks to ensure that they meet those qualifications. And it is our intent, I don't know if it's on the next slide, to notify families on the week of April 6th, whether they're awarded. Schools do not know that information. Families know that information. And so these are kind of just the what you might need to prepare to apply. So what has been pretty good, and I think for a lot of families, is that when we prove that the child's a U.S. citizen or lawfully present here, if a parent has, if both parents or if either jointly filing or single parent have a Texas driver's license, that is a real ID, we will be able to cross-check that with DPS on the back end, so you don't need to take a picture of it to upload. To know that that child's lawfully present, and that also will satisfy that residency requirement. And then you must return that total that 1040 or 1040 form that's 2024 or 2025 if that applies to you. Yes, and so this is basically all those kind of additional documentation that could be required to prove that you're eligible for the pre-K program. Won't really go into all of it, but I think that it's pretty publicly available and on the checklist as well. So the disability question comes up a lot, and I know that our youngest sometimes may not get screened early at an early age, but if a child is diagnosed with a disability and there's been an IEP done by a school district and that IEP is active, so meaning that it is either from last year or this year, and it would turn up in the school district system, that could be used for funding and prioritization to be in category 1. And so we'll go into the categories, I think, on the next slide or a couple slides down, but that will be determined to get that increased funding amount. The other thing that will be allowed is that a child might have a documentation from a form that might necessarily, your child is an issue, whether that's dyslexia, dysgraphia, maybe autistic, and you haven't really sat with a school district to determine that IEP. But what we will take is a form prescribed by the comptroller, which should be available this week or early next week, and you can start sending that to your families and to bring that to that diagnostician. So when families do apply, they can upload that form, and if they make less than 500% of that federal poverty limit, they will be in category 1. And so this is kind of how it'll work. If there's more applications and if there's more more children that apply, then there's $1 billion for the program. There's kind of 4 buckets that will go into the next slides of how that works. And so we'll begin to fill up the buckets, but if there's money that's run out, we will stop that. We will basically do a lottery system within that bucket, and then we will continue to create a wait list. Again, this wait list is prescribed by law, and it's required by the state for us to determine it, to send to the comptroller to report to the legislature what that wait list looks like, so that they know how much funding it would cost to fully fund the wait list. And so these are the kind of the 4 buckets. I kind of call them 5. I'll go into a second why 4 is the 4th one is a little different. So that first one is a child with a disability. So that means you have an active IEP on the school district with a child with the school district, or you have that documentation to prove that the child has a disability, is at or below 500% of the federal poverty limit. I think the new HHS guidelines came out today, so that could be helpful. And then bucket 2 is less than 200% of the federal poverty limit. Category 3 is between 200 and 500. And then category 4 is families making more than 500% of the federal poverty limit. And so there's really 4A and 4B. 4A is for families that their children were participating in public school the year before, and 4B is not public school. So everyone that's private school or homeschooled. And then, and so anyway, so then notifications we meet in April, April 6th, the week of April 6th, we're told, for 2026. And then money will hit the student, at least 25% will hit the student's account on July 1 of 2026. And I think with that, I'm kicking it over to Morgan.
I'm happy to. Do you want me to keep going, or should we pause and take questions? Because a whole bunch just got dumped, and I'll defer to our fearless moderators here.
Yeah, we're tracking them right now. I will say, for those who are putting questions in the chat, if you've already put it there, we'll sort through them. But if you can put them in the Q&A, it'll help us sort them a little bit easier. But yeah, no, I think we can keep going. We have some time reserved for questions on the family side after your presentation, Morgan. So I say, go ahead.
All right, I will be speedy. Hi, everybody. It's so good to be with you. My name's Morgan, and I work for an organization called outschool.org. And in one of the earlier slides, you see that we are a partner to Odyssey as we roll out TEFA across the state. Outschool.org is here to provide handheld, personalized, whatever you need support to families so that they know about the ESA, can successfully apply for the ESA, and then once they are awarded, know how to spend their funds. So we are personal coaches, navigators, cheerleaders of families that, like you too, if you want this opportunity, can do this for your child. So we support ESA programs in other states, and Texas is the one that we are most excited about. And I'll tell you in the next couple of slides just where we show up in helping families alongside leaders like yourselves to learn more about this program. So we are doing 3 things. We are trying to do them well. They all don't happen one at a time because it's a very busy time in Texas. But the first bucket of work that we are doing is we are standing up in-person events. So we are coming hopefully to a state or a city near you, excuse me, as we stand up events all across Texas. And I'll talk more about that in the next slide. We are also displaying all approved TEFA providers on a map so that families don't have to wonder, is there something in my neighborhood that I can spend my TEFA funds on? So all the approved schools, including all of you folks who want to be part of this program, as well as tutoring providers, therapists, everybody who is accepting TEFA funds, whether they are a school, a provider, or a product, will be shown on our Finder tool. So families already have an early glance of what and where they can spend their funds on. And then we are at the elbow of families the entire step of the way. So everywhere that at any point they have funds, we are there to guide them to make sure that they know what their funds can be used for. And if they have any sort of kitchen table conversations about deciding between this instructional material or that instructional material, that they have somebody as a sounding board, as a member of our team to talk to. So the events, I think, are on the next slide. So we are busy trying to stand up these events. So if your families would like to be able to hear some of this information in person, I think it's wonderful that they can hear them from you because you are here to learn more about this program. But if you think that they would benefit from an in-person session with me and our team, we would love to pass along these invitations through you to them. So this is just a snapshot. I think there's 6 here. We're doing 6 more in addition to what is listed here. Each one of these events is essentially to give them much of the same information that Daniel gave today. How do I apply? Am I eligible? How much money? Where do I spend it? But these are events that are open to the public, and we are happy to, as a follow-up to this call, send you the invitations. They all have Eventbrite registration links, and that you can pass to your families, and they can come hopefully on a sunny Saturday and enjoy a science museum or a bounce house or a magic show that we have at these community centers across the state. This is an example of the flyers. We know there is a diverse population in Texas, and we want to be as inclusive as we can. So all of our materials will be in English and Spanish. So this is the event that comes first. So the great city of San Antonio, we're going to be there next Friday with a mariachi band. And if you or your families are in the San Antonio area, please come and hang out with us. There will be catered meals as well as kid-friendly entertainment and an opportunity for parents to sit in the audience and get this information live and in real time, and then an opportunity for them to ask questions directly to many of the folks who are presenting on the call today. So pretty straightforward. Again, we have flyers for each one of the 12 events that we are hosting, and we'll send those up as follow-up sort of resources in case your families might be interested in attending one in a nearby city. This is the tool that we are making. This is a screenshot. I don't want to throw my moderators a wrench, but that link is clickable. So if you click on the link, it brings you to a website, and that is where you will find all of the schools that are currently approved for this program. It gets uploaded every week. So as you go through the application process that Daniel lined up and get approved, a week later, you will show up on this map. You are able to, as a family, look at this map, look by zip code, look by region. You can also filter by grade level. So if you're looking just for pre-K, that is a filter that you can sort through in the left-hand side. You'll notice that there are a few grayed out circles at the very top under the search bar. So this right now just shows schools because we're in school selection season. But pretty soon, in the next couple of weeks, we are also going to bring online approved tutors and approved therapists. And then all the other categories will come: approved technology, approved instructional materials. But this is our sort of version 1, trying to share this information with families so that they can browse their local area to see which TEFA schools are participating in the program. And then, like I mentioned, this is, I think, my last slide. We're here with families all along the way, and we are here for you all along the way. So whether it is before the application and we're asking questions like, how do I get all my documents in order? Or during the application of, how do I orient my phone so that I'm, sort of uploading the right documents, to after awarded, we're along the way helping families make sure that these funds are used for the personalization and the benefit of their terrific little kid. And we are, as we said, like a team that is able to do one-on-one phone calls, coaching calls, whatever families need to totally utilize these dollars. And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you both. Okay, lots of questions in the chat, which I, again, will do my best to get through as many as possible. I did want to clarify, there's lots of questions still regarding the teacher qualifications and also the instructional hours, the pre-K instructional hours. So there's also a specific question around whether or not you would be required to follow like public school holidays, for example. Daniel, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe the answer to that is no. You are not required to follow a public school calendar. This requirement is specifically around the instructional minutes that is required by the state for pre-kindergarten. So for pre-K 4, that's about 7 hours a day, but the instructional minutes are across like the entire year. I believe it's 70, almost 76,000 instructional minutes over the course of the year. So that's essentially what you would be able to bill for. That's again broken down to about 7 hours per day. Daniel, I don't know if you want to add in anything there specifically, and then I have some more specific follow-up questions, but is there anything there you want to chime in on? Okay.
Nope.
Also, there were lots of questions around the teacher certification. So in 2023, a bill was passed, House Bill 2729, that allowed for childcare programs entering into pre-K partnerships to have what's called a qualified teacher teach pre-kindergarten. Those are the same qualifications for teachers currently in the TEFA program. So a teacher can be fully certified or they can be qualified. The qualifications, and we will send this in a follow-up email as well, a link to where you can find exactly what these qualifications are. But probably the most commonly met qualifications for a qualified teacher is they must have 2 years of experience combined with a CDA, or there's a few other accreditation options. CDA, accredited by the Montessori Association. You could have a bachelor's degree or an associate's degree in early childhood education or relevant field. So you do not have to be a fully certified teacher to be able to teach in that classroom. You do if you meet what's called the qualified teacher. If you are a qualified teacher, not a certified teacher, you have to be supervised in some capacity by a fully certified teacher. So for example, if you have a center director, if the center director has a teacher certification, they could operate as the supervising teacher over that qualified teacher. If you are part of a chain that has a fully certified teacher that could supervise your qualified teachers, that would also count as well. It's pretty broad in terms of what the supervising teacher, the capacity of the supervising teacher. I will say, like, this is evolving. I know there are lots of conversations happening around this specific part of the requirement. I think it's going to be a lot of kind of learning as we go in the childcare field around this specific piece. But we will be sure to share more information on that specific, the qualified versus certified teacher in a follow-up email. Okay, there are specific questions pivoting back, Daniel, to the hours and the billing related to pre-K. There's a very specific question, but I think it's a helpful question. So if your regular school day is 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. for your program and you bill weekly, how would you determine what to charge for the pre-K program? That might be a Daniel and a Dorice program.
Yeah,
So my
maybe
pre-K
start with
school operates 6 a.m. to 6 p.m.
So if it's 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and that's like the advertised that the pre-K program curriculum is that long, then that's okay to bill that. You could enter in tuition, on a weekly basis on our platform. And so but again, it has to be all 6 to 6 pre-K, which more power to you.
Awesome. And then transportation services. So if a provider bills, typically everything is kind of included in the price. Transportation is included as well. Would they need to still bill separately for transportation to account for some of these like auditing risks, or what would be your recommendation there?
So basically, when the platform goes live, you'll see a tuition number, and then you could add any kind of meal fees, transportation fees. For accounting purposes, recommend that. But if it's, your lump sum tuition and fees lumped it in, it's not the end of the world as long as it's all together.
Okay. If a family receives TEFA funding and they select your school, will you be notified? How will you know if families are coming to you with TEFA funding, or if an existing family at your school received TEFA funding? What is the notification process?
Yeah, so I'll back up a little bit. So the benefit of getting on the platform now is that when families start to apply, they can select your school. So you'll know in real time which families are selecting your school. You will not know whether they're awarded that amount, awarded the TEFA until April 6th or something when they tell you that they've been in the program. So, but it's helpful for the purposes of if you have a child or a family that selects your school that you had no idea about, you can reach out to them and they can reach out to you saying, I selected my school. What does it look like for next fall, kind of thing? And just to make sure that your attendance records line up with the TEFA attendance records, or those schools that those parents that are selecting you.
There's a few questions in the chat related to ESL and then also SPED qualifications. So if I am a child who would qualify for pre-kindergarten based off on my emergent bilingual status, what is the process for that family? We know that for income, they'll be filing a tax return, so they would that's likely how you all would determine income eligibility based on income. But if they meet the eligibility based off ESL, what does that look like for a family, and what's the process they need to go through?
Yes, so it's that I think it's called the HLS home language survey, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And so basically that has to be done per TEA rules in the public school setting. And so if there is documentation that you take that test, and then it'll be uploaded for that. But any of those other kind of there'll be a kind of a document upload section part of the application process for those other kind of extraneous qualifications for pre-K.
And do they have to have that home language survey completed prior to submitting their application?
It probably needs to be done before March 17th. So if you apply early, but it needs to be done before March 17th because that's when the window closes and that's when we'll determine eligibility.
Okay. And then similarly with SPED, I know you and I chatted a little bit about this before. So there's documentation needed for a child to upload in order to ensure they are prioritized in that priority group 1. There's a few options there, but then they must have their IEP conducted by a public school and uploaded prior to that March 17th date.
That's right.
In order to receive the additional funding.
That's right.
Beyond the 10,000.
Right. And so the IEP must be submitted by the district before. So not when you sit for that evaluation, but when the IEP must be uploaded by the district to ensure that that increased funding is allocated before March 17th.
So if you have families in your programs who you believe would qualify based off of their language status, home language status, I would begin encouraging them to ensure that they are kind of completing the necessary steps to get that documentation put together, because that will be a part of the additional kind of hoops that pre-K families need to jump through. And then similarly, for children with diagnosed special needs, I would go ahead and start encouraging those families as well. I will say, and I actually don't think this was in the chat, but this has come up in other conversations, special education, having an IEP is not a qualifier for pre-kindergarten. So if a child doesn't meet any of the other qualifications for pre-kindergarten, then they would have to wait till kindergarten to be eligible for the program. If they are solely, their only kind of qualifier would be special needs, and they don't meet the other pre-K pieces. There are still lots of questions in the chat regarding the instructional minutes and the pre-K hours. What we will commit to doing is continuing to work with the Odyssey team and the controller team to put together potentially an FAQ that is very specific to this, and we'll send that out to you all to make sure that you have it. It seems like there's a lot of questions on this. It is very nuanced, and we want to make sure that providers have as clear of information as possible. Let's see. There's another question in there. I know we're wrapping up for Morgan. Is there an opportunity for providers to join your family events, your family-facing events, and potentially help market their program? Or is there another way that you would suggest providers think about marketing their program, if not these events?
Yeah, so I think the easiest way is to go ahead and get approved, and then you're a MAP dot, which is great. And then we send everyone who is approved this really fun like profile form where you can brag about yourself. There's all these different tags that you can use to provide information about what makes your school, campus, daycare center the very best for families. So you can speak directly to families who are browsing by sort of like spicing up your profile. And then In terms of events, that is something that we are actively talking to the comptroller's office about. We don't have anything firm to share, but we are thinking about, at a minimum, maybe soliciting an interest form to providers that may want to come and table at one of our TEFA events. We haven't sort of like launched that into the world yet, but it is something that other schools have asked us about because families are going to be there to gather. Wouldn't it be great for them to learn about pre-K centers? I will say that for that, the interest form would be for folks who, for all purposes, would be sort of TEFA eligible. So you would be screened against the criteria that Daniel showed at the top of the call. So we would just want to make sure that we are putting you in front of families if you actually are available and eligible for the funds. But to be determined, I think if we do post that interest form, I can share that with the CCA team, and then you can share that more broadly.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, it is 2:00, so we are going to wrap up. We will share the slides, we will share a recording, and we will do our best to capture the many unanswered questions in the chat, get answers for you all, and send that out in a follow-up as well. I apologize for not being able to get to all of them. These are some really great questions, and appreciate you all taking the time to learn more about this program, to market this program to your eligible families. This is an exciting opportunity for every one of us, I think, on this call. And so it is certainly evolving, and we'll continue to share information and resources as we have them with you all as well. Special thanks to our presenters. Y'all are amazing. We will